Follow all safety procedures outlined in the service manual. Disconnect power to the Pinsetter before making repairs. Never work on a machine alone because no one can help you if something goes wrong. Make sure you understand what you're doing before you do it. I am not responsible for your well-being. This video is for demonstration purposes only and is not a how-to repair bowling machine video. I encourage you to check out bowltech.com. It is a great living resource about bowling equipment repair and maintenance. My username is Bolton454. Now let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Bowlfix. I'm going to follow along and kind of tell you what I'm doing while I'm doing it. We got a blower motor here, a hand blower that's making a tremendous amount of noise. And we have a power lift that's making a lot of noise. We're on lanes 11 and 12, and we're going to take a look at those and see if we can make them run more quietly. Somebody left the bowling balls in there from last night, so I'm just putting those away so I have a place to work. Normally there's 4 screws to hold this cover on. This cover is apparently missing 1 screw, so we're going to take out 3 screws. Once you get the screws out, they just kind of lift out of there and everything comes off. But before we take that off, I'm going to reach under here and I'm going to remove the power. There's a switch under here. We're just going to turn the switch off. Just make sure that can't come on. These wires over here, they're a shamble. It was just from the installation. Looks like they need to be kind of wire tied back. Or they kind of slipped out of their wire tie, got caught up in the cover. So part of the reason this machine's making so much noise, the belt's bad. So it's kind of shedding. It's got a little racing stripe going down it from something rubbing against it, so we're going to replace that belt too. So with the power off, we're going to lift this guy up, flip it over, and looky there. There's the blower. These blower motors are connected to a switch. They've got a couple little tricky screws that you got to remove. There's a main screw that holds the blower to the assembly there, and you can hear that bearing. That bearing is dry. I do have a replacement motor which came from our motor shop, and it is 115 volts. I am not sure if this motor is 115 volts or 230 or 220, high voltage versus just regular line voltage. But I'm kind of thinking I was going to take that out, swap some wires out, connect it up, and have a nice new blower motor in here. But I want to measure the voltage just to be sure. Have the power turned on, have a lane turned on, then I have the power turned on, and I'm going to get a voltmeter, reach in there very, very carefully. Oh, look, money. Yeah, see, I had to turn the switch on to make it come on. And there's your voltage, 217 volts. So at this point, I'm kind of like, yeah, not exactly what I had expected. So that's what I look like when I feel a little bit of disappointment and frustration. But we'll move on. So looks like I'm going to clean up the old fan. Got a little WD-40 down in there. Make sure that Allen screw is lubricated so it will come out easily. If you strip those out, it is nearly impossible to drill those out without getting some really long skinny drill bits and messing with all of that. So we just lubricate it. And that's kind of my policy on anything I'm working on. A little WD-40 on it before I take it apart. This like fan thing hasn't been apart since it was probably put in. Who knows? You know, machines were likely manufactured in the 70s, so that was quite a long time ago. So got the fan, the actual squirrel cage part out, and now we have to yeah, you can hear that bearing. It doesn't turn very freely. We'll get a nut driver. We're going to take the nuts off the end of the they're kind of like a carriage bolt. I guess they're a carriage bolt that holds the actual motor assembly to the blower cage. So it's going to be a little bit stuck. You got to just kind of tap it a little bit. There's a gasket that kind of holds it on there. And boom, there you go. It's a little cork, kind of a cork gasket. Try to save as much as you can. You're going to want that gasket for later. It just sounds beautiful, doesn't it? So we're going to wipe that little guy down, and we're going to get the case separated so that we can get to the armature part of the motor. So right there is the bearing. The armature holds the bearings, and I'm going to apply just some 30 weight oil to it. I really didn't think about using brake cleaner or anything like that. I just figured it might make it worse. I don't know what the policy is on that. I guess you replace the bearings, but these bearings kind of had a shield on them that looked like it was kind of a press fit or something to help it fit into the housing correctly. And I'm already spending more time on the job than I anticipated, so I think just getting oil in there should help it out. Kind of wiggle the bearing around to see if I can get that oil to kind of work past the seal. There's a little tiny bit of play in there. But get the oil inside, that's where it'll do the most good. All right, now we are going to go ahead and start cleaning everything up and reassemble. This is a cleaner that I use. It's my favorite cleaner. It's made by US Polychem. It's called ST21. Polychem is in New York. You spray that ST21 like on anything that had smoke. Everything was kind of smoky from the old bowling alley days. Any aluminum or anything that had a smoke haze on it, it would just dissolve it. Of course, you want to be very careful around these wires. You don't want to kink them or pinch them or scratch them. Down inside, I believe there was a washer, a spacer that had to be kind of put back into its little keeper. Yep, there's the washer. So I kind of wiped everything out and beginning to put everything back together. These motors are really pretty simple. I'm glad they go together so well. Honestly, they're kind of made to be repaired. I don't think anything is now, but these kind of seem like they're made to be repaired. Tugging at the wire just to make sure I don't kink the wire inside there and pinch it off. And we're just trying to get everything lined up to get that bolt to go all the way through. There we go, that snapped right in there. The motor turns freely. And we're going to begin, oh, we got to clean up the squirrel cage. Got to get squirrel cage and the housing done. Remember to put the gasket back. That's pretty important, I guess. Otherwise they wouldn't have had it, right? Kind of keeps things from being metal on metal. The ST21 is mixed 1-to-1 with water. If you get it too strong, it's really, really hard on your hands. So we don't want to damage ourselves with that stuff. Probably should use gloves if you're going to be using any kind of industrial cleaner. The T-handled Allen wrench works perfectly for this. That bearing turns much quieter now. I think that is going to be a successful repair. Always put away your tools when you're done. Keep the shop clean, keep things put away. When you come back and you need something, you can always find it. Now after got that motor nice and clean, I'm looking at the top of the fan, the hand dryer. And it's, I don't know what you call that thing. It's super dirty, so we're gonna wash it down. It takes a couple of attempts to get all of that off of there. I can only imagine the dirt, how old the dirt is. It has got to be 40, 50 years old coming off of there. A little drill with a wheel and a brush would have been nice for this, but I didn't have one, so we're just going to use a screwdriver and a rag. I didn't quite get it clean yet, so I'm going to go back and give it a second run. In my experience, that bracket has been missing in some of the other lanes, and I have to make something in its place because the motor won't mount correctly without having that bottom bracket there. It clamps the blower, kind of clamps the motor in to where it's mounted to that top housing. Alright, we're mounting the fan back in with a couple of 1/4-inch bolts and a screwdriver. I like to center the fan over that blowhole at the bottom just to make sure we get maximum airflow. This part was a little bit tricky for me. There's not really a good straight access to that switch where the motor wires go. So I usually will take the screw and stick it into the wire connector and use the wire connector to kind of hold the screw while I get it started. This side's just a little bit trickier, but we get her in there. Alright, right here I'm connecting the ground wire. I've turned a lane on, lane 11's on, and I'm going to reach underneath and turn on the switch for the power lift assembly. The fan is a lot quieter now. So with this part of the job finished, I'm going to go ahead and clean up. I'm going to put everything back, reassemble everything, pick up my tools, and start from scratch for the next part of the assembly. Be careful putting that top back on. Those wires have a tendency to catch and get pinched, and that's not good for the wires. Notice how I start all the screws before I tighten them down. Usually if you tighten one screw down, you can't get the other ones in, so it's just a standard policy. See, that one took a little bit. Took a little bit to get it going, but they're all going in now. I always clean up after myself using a little ST21 here. It can be anything. You could use Windex here. It doesn't matter. I'm just making sure I didn't leave any dust or dirt or grime, fingerprints, anything like that. And then I like to go over it just with a teeny tiny bit of old lane conditioner, some obsolete lane conditioner. It makes that stainless steel really pop, and it hides any last fingerprints or anything else. Just gives it a nice shine. And now for the second part of our video, we're going to replace this belt. Now from my point of view, as soon as I got the belt off, I should have probably cleaned all that dust and everything off of there. But my mind was in the mode to put the new belt on and let's get it running. And this belt is shorter. It's a little shorter than the one I took off. The one I took off was probably stretched out from age. And the good news is the adjuster for this belt is at the top. It's that silver pulley up there. That silver pulley has a slot, and you can just slide it down, and then I'm gonna put that belt just around it and make sure it's around the pulley at the bottom and around the motor. So you see I've slipped that belt just off the side of that big pulley. It gives me a little slack so I can pull the tension pulley up and make it tighter. All right, I'm going to go turn a lane on. I've turned the power back on. You can see the belt running. I hear a little bit of a noise, so I stuck my finger on that bearing just to see if I could feel a vibration coming from it. If I had a bearing, I'd probably put a new one in. It is just a little bit noisy. Looks like there's a couple of nuts that are loose on the ball track, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten those up. I threw a couple balls down just to test it out and make sure it would actually lift up a bowling ball. This belt is an A90. I think it also fits certain gearboxes. I think it's a motor to jack shaft belt. So I'm gonna deal with these wires a little bit, get them stowed away, put them back in and get them tucked in so I can get the cover back on. And since I had the cover off, I want to make sure the reset buttons work and the machines will cycle. These lanes are missing the deck shields. One of these days I'll make a video of the installation of the deck shields. Over time the deck shields break, they crack and they need to be rebuilt. The screws break off inside the machine that mount them. So I want to make the repairs, put the deck shields up. It kind of makes the pin setter look magical when the pins arrive. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe the outside of that power lift down, get all the belt dust off of it, just to make it to where it looks nicer. And I'm going to button this guy up and we'll put the cover back on. My favorite covers were actually the Brunswick 2000s. They were the easiest to install, and I think they had the best look of all of them. I'm going to spray this down, get all the fingerprints off of there. I may have left some, grease and grime around the area. I want to make sure that's all clean. Pick up my tools, get all that area cleaned up. My policy is if you're working on something, just clean up after yourself so that somebody doesn't have to look at your mess when you're done. And it must have been a crazy night from the night before, because these little covers were off on about 6 lanes. So I'm going to just pop these back on. I've got 13 and 14 here, and I'm going to pop them back on to 15, 16. It's kind of like one of those things I asked myself, am I the only one that notices these things? So be sure to like and subscribe my video. That's kind of it for this episode of Bowlfix. Thanks for watching.